To the world, she was Marilyn Monroe, the golden goddess of Hollywood. The woman every man desired and every woman envied. But behind that famous smile lived a lonely heart. A heart that cried when the cameras stopped rolling. On a warm August night in 1962, her light went out forever, and the world never stopped asking why. This isn't just the story of a movie star. It's the story of a little girl who wanted to be loved. And the truth about what really happened that night. She was born as Norma Jeane Mortensen on a warm June day in 1926, a baby girl with bright eyes and a soft cry, who had no idea that one day the whole world would know her name. But before she became Marilyn Monroe, the shimmering symbol of beauty, charm, and Hollywood fantasy, she was just a little girl who wanted one thing more than anything else in the world: to be loved. Her early life was far from the glamour we imagine. Her mother, Gladys, worked hard at a film lab in Los Angeles, but struggled deeply with her own mind. Her father had disappeared before she ever got the chance to know him. And so, from the very beginning, Norma Jeane's world was unstable, filled with foster homes, uncertainty, and loneliness. One could almost say that the famous smile she wore later in life was born from all the tears she wasn't allowed to show as a child. When Gladys was sent away for treatment, Norma Jeane became a child of the system, shuffled between foster families who didn't always treat her kindly. She learned to survive by imagining a world where she was wanted, where people looked at her and smiled instead of turning away. In that imaginary world, she was already a star, even if no one else could see it yet. By the time she was 16, she had lived in more than a dozen homes. The only way to escape another orphanage was to marry, and so she did. It wasn't for love, but for survival. Her husband, James Doherty, was kind, but their marriage was built on necessity, not passion. When he went off to war, Norma Jeane went to work in a munitions factory like so many young women of that era. It was there, between the noise of machines and the smell of oil, that fate took notice of her. A military photographer walked by, camera in hand, and saw something: a spark, a glow, something that could not be ignored. He asked to take her picture. She said yes, shyly at first, then with growing confidence. When she saw the photographs, she hardly recognized herself. That radiant young woman, smiling back at her, looked strong, beautiful, and full of life. It was as if the dream she'd built in her imagination had suddenly taken form. Soon, modeling offers followed. She straightened her hair, dyed it golden blonde, and slowly transformed into someone new. Marilyn Monroe was born, a name that rolled off the tongue like a song. It was a name that promised stardom, but also came with a price: the disappearance of Norma Jeane. Hollywood took notice quickly. Her photos appeared in magazines. Then came small film roles, bit parts, mostly background work. But even in a crowd, Marilyn stood out. She had that rare combination of innocence and allure, a light that drew people in. Studios began to whisper her name. Executives said she had something different, something that couldn't be taught. But behind the bright lights and perfect poses, Marilyn was still learning who she was. She read constantly, books on psychology, literature, and art. She practiced her lines until late at night. She wanted to be more than just a pretty face, more than a pin-up girl. She wanted to be an actress, a real one. She wanted people to see her heart, not just her beauty. Her early film roles in The Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve caught attention. Critics began to write about the blonde with the wounded eyes. It was that contradiction, the sparkle and the sadness, that made her unforgettable. She could make a man laugh and break his heart in the same scene. Still, Hollywood wasn't easy on women, especially women like Marilyn. Behind closed doors, producers wanted her to play dumb blondes, to giggle and flirt. She played along at first, because she had to, but deep down, she was waiting for a role that would let her show the world who she really was. By the early 1950s, she had become a sensation. Films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire turned her into a household name. Crowds screamed when she appeared in public. Men adored her, women wanted to be her, and the press followed her every move. She was the American dream in high heels and red lipstick. But as her fame grew, so did her loneliness. People saw the glamour, the diamonds, the laughter, but few saw the fear that lived behind her smile. She was terrified of being forgotten, terrified of being unloved. Every time she looked into a mirror, she wasn't sure if she saw Marilyn Monroe, the star, or Norma Jeane, the abandoned girl. Her first marriage had long ended. In 1954, she married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, one of the most admired men in America. For a while, it seemed like a fairy tale, beauty and hero, hand in hand. But Joe wanted a quiet wife, and Marilyn was anything but quiet. When she filmed the famous scene for the 7-Year Itch, the white dress blowing up over the subway grate, the crowd cheered. But Joe didn't. He was furious, embarrassed, even jealous. Behind closed doors, their love turned to conflict. Within 9 months, the marriage was over. Still, Joe never stopped loving, not really. In later years, he would send flowers to her grave 3 times a week. But in 1954, when the marriage ended, Marilyn's heart broke once again. After the divorce, she left Hollywood for New York, hoping to reinvent herself. To escape the dumb blonde image that had trapped her, she joined the actor's studio, studying under Lee Strasberg, the great acting teacher of the time. It was there that she began to understand herself and her pain. She wanted to be taken seriously, to find meaning in her craft. And she did. Her performances deepened, her expressions more real, her emotions raw. She was finally learning to channel all the hurt she'd carried. For years, the lost childhood, the broken love, the emptiness of fame, into something beautiful. But Hollywood didn't like to let go of its creations. When she returned, she was more powerful than before, not just a star, but an artist. Her production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, gave her control over her roles. For a woman in the 1950s, that was revolutionary. Still, the higher she climbed, the lonelier she became. Fame is a strange thing. It gives you everything and takes away what you need most. Marilyn was surrounded by people, yet often felt invisible. She struggled with sleeplessness, anxiety, and self-doubt. She began relying on pills to calm her nerves, to help her sleep, to face the day. It was a dangerous cycle, one that Hollywood culture only made worse. In public, she glowed like a goddess. In private, she was fragile, craving kindness, tenderness, someone who saw her as a person, not a fantasy. And then, she met a man who spoke to her mind. Playwright Arthur Miller. He was thoughtful, quiet, and brilliant. Marilyn felt understood for the first time. They married in 1956, and for a moment, it seemed like she had finally found peace. But even that would not last. When Marilyn married Arthur Miller in 1956, the world gasped. Hollywood's golden girl and America's intellectual playwright. It sounded like a dream pairing, the meeting of beauty and brains. The press called them the egghead and the hourglass. But for Marilyn, this marriage wasn't about headlines or appearances. It was about finding someone who could finally see her, really see her, not as a poster or a product, but as a woman with thoughts, fears, and a fragile heart. In Arthur, she thought she had found that man. He was kind, serious, and deeply introspective. He didn't just listen to her, he heard her. He read her poems, discussed literature with her, and encouraged her to keep learning. For a while, she bloomed under that kind of love. She read Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Rilke. She filled notebooks with her thoughts, dreams, and insecurities. She wanted to be a woman of depth, not just a pretty face. But even the gentlest love can falter when two worlds collide. Arthur was a writer who lived in his head. Marilyn was a woman who lived through her emotions. He loved her, but he didn't always understand her fragility. Fame followed her everywhere, and with it came photographers, rumors, and endless pressure. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape being Marilyn Monroe. Even when she wanted to just be Norma Jeane, barefoot, laughing, free, the cameras always found her. In 1957, she faced one of the deepest heartbreaks of her life. She lost the child she had been carrying, and with it, the dream of becoming a mother. She had always longed for the kind of love she never received as a child. Unconditional, steady, real. That loss shattered her in ways no one could see. She smiled for the public, but inside, she was falling apart. Arthur tried to help, but grief is a language few can speak fluently. Their marriage began to strain. He wrote in his diary that sometimes he felt disappointed in her, that her sadness and unpredictability frightened him. She found those words, and it broke her heart. "To think I was someone who disappointed you," she told him softly. "That's the worst thing I've ever read." Still, she fought to hold on to him, to her career, to herself. She poured her pain into her films. In Some Like It Hot, she radiated joy and mischief on screen, her laughter infectious, her beauty mesmerizing. The film became one of the greatest comedies ever made. Audiences adored her, but behind the scenes, it wasn't easy. She was often late to set, sometimes missing altogether. Her anxiety made it difficult to sleep. Her exhaustion made it hard to function. Co-star Tony Curtis once said, "Kissing Marilyn was like kissing Hitler," cruel remark born not from truth, but from frustration at her delays. What few understood was that she wasn't being careless. She was fighting battles no one could see, battles with her mind, her self-worth, her insomnia, and the very image that had made her famous. Hollywood called her difficult, but the truth was she was hurting. Despite it all, when the camera rolled, magic happened. Her charm was effortless, her timing perfect. Director Billy Wilder, though often exasperated, admitted, "My nightmare as a director became the dream of audiences. That was Marilyn. Chaos off-screen, perfection on-screen." By the early 1960s, however, the cracks were showing. Her marriage to Arthur Miller had quietly fallen apart. During the filming of The Misfits, a movie Miller had written for her, their relationship collapsed under the weight of disappointment. The film itself mirrored her own life, a lonely woman searching for meaning in a cruel, fading world. It was her final completed film. When The Misfits was released in 1961, critics admired her performance, but noted her sadness. That wasn't acting, that was Marilyn raw, vulnerable, and lost. Shortly after filming ended, she and Miller divorced. Once again, she was alone, but loneliness had always been her most faithful companion. That same year, she was admitted to a clinic to recover from exhaustion and emotional strain. She felt trapped, misunderstood, and betrayed by the people who were supposed to help her. Her old friend and acting coach, Paula Strasberg, came to comfort her, reminding her that she was loved, that she mattered. But Marilyn wasn't sure she believed it anymore. When she left the hospital, her old spark seemed dimmed, yet she was determined to rise again. She moved into a new home in Brentwood, California, a quiet, sunlit house, with white walls and gentle breezes. She said she wanted peace. She filled the rooms with books, art, and soft music. For the first time, she had a place that truly felt like her own. But Hollywood wasn't done with her. She signed on to film Something's Got to Give for 20th Century Fox. The studio hoped it would mark her great comeback. At first, Marilyn seemed eager. She was thinner than ever, sometimes too thin, but her spirit was playful. She smiled for the cameras, joked with the crew, and promised she'd give them her best performance yet. Then the old patterns returned. She arrived late to set, sometimes hours late, sometimes not at all. She blamed illness, and in truth, she was sick, both physically and emotionally. The studio grew impatient. They fired her, replaced her, and launched a media storm of criticism. Marilyn Monroe unreliable, the headlines screamed. But there was another side to the story. Only weeks earlier, she had sung "Happy Birthday" to President John F. Kennedy at Madison Square Garden, a moment the world would never forget. Dressed in a shimmering, skin-tight gown, she looked like a living flame, fragile and dazzling. The performance became legendary, but also scandalous. Rumors spread of secret affairs, private meetings, and whispered promises. The more the public speculated, the more the studio distanced itself. For Marilyn, it was too much. She felt betrayed, used, and misunderstood once again. Her circle of friends shrank. The phone rang less often. Reporters hounded her for gossip, but few asked how she really was. Behind the glamorous headlines, Marilyn Monroe was lonely, desperately lonely. The same little girl who once dreamed of being loved was now one of the most famous women in the world, yet still searching for someone to hold her without wanting anything in return. She began seeing a new therapist, trying to find stability. She reconnected with Joe DiMaggio, her ex-husband, who had quietly re-entered her life. He wanted to protect her, to bring her back to herself. Friends said Joe had matured, that he treated her gently now, with genuine care. Marilyn seemed comforted by him. For the first time in a long while, she smiled again, a real smile, small but sincere. But life has a cruel way of twisting when you least expect it. By the summer of 1962, Marilyn was under enormous pressure. Her career was uncertain, her relationships fragile, and her health deteriorating. Yet she told close friends she felt hopeful. She was planning to remarry Joe, buy new horses, even redecorate her home. She was trying to heal. There were still scripts on her nightstand, still dreams in her diary, still that glimmer, faint but alive. In her final photo shoots, she looked ethereal, lighter somehow, as if caught between two worlds. The smile was there, but softer. Her eyes, deep as ever, seemed to hold both peace and farewell. She spoke gently about wanting to start over. "I don't want to be a joke anymore," she said quietly. "I just want to be happy." No one could have known that within weeks, she would be gone. It was August 4th, 1962. The sun had set softly over Los Angeles, leaving behind a warm golden sky. Inside a quiet white house on Fifth Helena Drive in Brentwood, the most famous woman in the world was alone. That night, Marilyn Monroe spoke to a few friends on the phone. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, moved quietly through the house, checking in on her every so often. It seemed like any other evening, except it wasn't. In the days leading up to that night, Marilyn had been both fragile and hopeful. She had recently been rehired for some things. Got to give. Fox executives realized that firing her had been a mistake. Her fans wanted her back. She was in therapy, seeing friends again, and even planning to remarry Joe DiMaggio. He had proposed only a few days before, promising her a quieter, gentler life. "I'll never let you get hurt again," he told her. For the first time in a long time, she had hope. Yet the darkness inside her never truly went away. Years of exhaustion, insomnia, and emotional strain had left her soul tired. She had lived for everyone, for the cameras, for the headlines, for the men who loved her and the audience who worshipped her, but rarely for herself. That evening, she called her friend Peter Lawford, the actor and brother-in-law of President Kennedy. She sounded drowsy but calm. "Say goodbye to the president," she murmured. "Say goodbye to yourself. Because you're a nice guy." Peter tried to keep her talking, but the line went dead. He tried calling back. No answer. What happened next remains one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries. Sometime between the late hours of August 4th and early morning of August 5th, Marilyn's bedroom light stayed on. Her door was locked. Her housekeeper grew worried and called her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived around 3 in the morning. He broke through the window and there, they found her. Marilyn Monroe was gone. She was only 36 years old. When news of her death broke, the world seemed to stop. Radios fell silent, newspapers rushed to print, and people wept openly in the streets. Men who had adored her, women who had admired her, and children who had grown up with her movies, all felt as though someone beautiful and familiar had vanished from the earth. The coroner's report listed the cause as probable suicide due to an overdose of barbiturates. But even now, more than 6 decades later, questions linger. Some believed it was an accident, that she had simply taken too many pills trying to sleep. Others whispered of darker possibilities, powerful men, secret affairs, and a truth buried by influence. But speculation never brought peace, and perhaps that's the tragedy of it all. Because beyond the mystery, beyond the politics and the theories, was a woman fragile, brilliant, and endlessly human, who just wanted to be loved. Joe DiMaggio handled her funeral. He banned all of Hollywood. No producers, no studio executives, no press. Only family and a few close friends were allowed. The service was small, quiet, filled with white flowers and gentle tears. Joe stood beside her casket, broken but dignified. When asked by reporters why he kept the ceremony private, he said softly, "Because Marilyn belonged to me, not to the world." For 20 years after her death, Joe sent roses to her crypt 3 times a week. Every week, without fail. Until the day he died, he never married again. His final words, reportedly, were, "I'll finally get to see Marilyn. That kind of love, pure, steady, faithful, was the kind she had always searched for, but never quite found in life." After her death, the world began to realize just how extraordinary Marilyn truly was, not only as a beauty, but as a soul. People read her notebooks, her letters, her poems. They discovered that she had depth, wit, and intelligence the tabloids had ignored. In one of her handwritten notes, she wrote, "I am good, but not an angel. I do sin, but I'm not the devil. I am just a small girl in a big world trying to find someone to love." Those words echo the heart of Marilyn Monroe. She was never the shallow bombshell people made her out to be. She was a dreamer, a reader, a thinker, a woman who carried her pain gracefully, even when the weight was unbearable. She used laughter to hide sadness, and glamour to mask fear. Behind every photo, every laugh, every dazzling moment on screen, there was a girl still asking the world, "Will you love me if I'm not perfect?" And perhaps that is why her story still touches us. Because in Marilyn, we see ourselves, our hopes, our insecurities, our wish to be seen for who we truly are. Her tragedy reminds us how fragile fame can be, how loneliness can live even in the brightest light. Today, when we watch her in Some Like It Hot, or The 7-Year Itch, or Bus Stop, we still feel her warmth. Her humor still sparkles. Her eyes still tell stories words never could. Time hasn't dimmed her, if anything. It has made her glow brighter, softer, more human. Every generation discovers Marilyn anew, not just as a legend, but as a symbol of what it means to be beautifully imperfect. Hollywood has produced thousands of stars, but only one Marilyn Monroe. She was not simply a woman who lived and died too soon. She was a mirror of our shared humanity, the light and the shadows, the laughter and the ache. In the quiet of her Brentwood home, the wind still moves through the garden. The pool still reflects the sky she once loved to swim beneath. Visitors still come, leaving flowers, letters, and tears. They whisper, "We remember you." Because Marilyn Monroe, the woman who rose from nothing, who made the world believe in magic, who carried her pain with a smile, never really left us. Her body may have been laid to rest that night, but her spirit, that wild, gentle, shining spirit, continues to live in every person who ever dared to dream, to fall, to get back up again, and to want, more than anything else, to be loved. If you listen closely to the flicker of an old film reel, you can almost hear her laugh again, like musical, guarded. You can see her standing beneath the studio lights, tilting her head, whispering, "I'm not interested in money, I just want to be wonderful." And in her own way, she was. She was wonderful, not because she was perfect, but because she was real. The tragedy of Marilyn Monroe is not how she died. It's how much of her beauty, brilliance, and soul the world never got to see. But the miracle is that somehow, even after all these years, her light still shines. Not from the screens, but from the hearts of those who never stopped loving her.